Hi. Hi. So great to see so many people wanting to learn about calming their nervous system down, finding peace. Imagine that, huh? Imagine that these days. Can we find peace? Is it possible? Yes. Yes, it is. I want you to know it is. That's the good news. Let's see. All right. Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad you're here. I'm grateful to do to host another Zoom gathering with all of you. It feels like community, and I really appreciate that. And I think we really need that right now. I just wanted to let you know that Jen, who I had done the live coaching session with, is in the middle of some big life changes, and we will get back to her and do another follow-up session. Yes, I see her right there, actually. We'll get back and do another follow-up session with her at some point in the future. Um, in the meantime, let's all get comfortable. And I thought that we would start today. So today we're going to be talking about finding peace in the wisdom years. Of course, we want to find peace in any decade, any generation, any years. But especially, I find, I guess I'll just speak for myself in saying that, the older you get, the more you feel like, okay, I have a limited amount of time here on the planet. I'd like to actually enjoy this time rather than feel like I'm up against something all the time. So, the whole notion of being able to cultivate a peaceful, calm state, even when it feels like the world is chaotic and crazy, is a real blessing and a gift to be able to do that at any stage of life, and especially in the wisdom years. And I've certainly talked about some of this before in terms of presence, but today we're going to focus on the nervous system, which is something that I'm really passionate about these days. I have been passionate about the nervous system for a long time, and I didn't know it. I didn't get the whole kind of um, just the whole, I was going to say system, but it is a system. I didn't see finding peace through this lens in such a direct way. And in the last 3 months, I've been really studying more of the nervous system and how it works, polyvagal theory, which is about the vagus nerve and the nervous system and how it operates. And I have been applying what I'm learning over the last few months, and it's made an enormous difference in the quality of my life. And like I often do, is I learn things, I implement them or apply them to my own life, and then wind up teaching what I'm learning. I find it helps me to kind of anchor in what it is I'm learning. And also, I just love teaching and sharing things that work with all of you. So I'm going to say a little bit about the nervous system up front, and then we'll open it up for discussion, for questions. Here's how I want to start. I want to start by asking you to take a few moments to close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing that. If not, don't worry about it. But just take a few moments and close your eyes and tune in to where you feel right now. Let's just call it, let's say your stress level is just a good catch-all term. So just notice on a scale from 1 to 10, with 1 being, I feel pretty calm and regulated, and 10 being, I feel really dysregulated, which means you could either feel like you just want to go to sleep, you want to just tune out, or you feel a lot of energy and maybe even anxiety in your body. So 0 is kind of calm, balanced state, and 10 is a state of dysregulation, either sympathetic dysregulation or dorsal. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. So I'm going to do the same thing. And you want to just rate yourself, not your skelf, rate yourself on a scale from 1 to 10 with how relaxed and balanced you feel. And then once you have a number, you want to write it down and continue keeping your eyes closed. And I'm going to repeat some things some of you may have heard me say before, but they are worth repeating, and they are worth repeating. So with your eyes closed, I want you to just find a pattern of breathing that feels comfortable to you. We're going to do this for just a few minutes. Just breathe in a way that feels comfortable to you. Remember that the minute you close your eyes, your brain begins making alpha waves, which calms the body down. It engages the parasympathetic nervous system, the calming part of your nervous system, just by closing your eyes. And it's kind of an awesome thing because it does it whether you want to calm down or not. You'll automatically start calming down when you close your eyes. Then the next thing you want to do is just extend your exhale. So in whatever way you're choosing to breathe right now, just breathe in a way that extends your exhale breath. So your inhale is going to be shorter than your exhale in whatever pattern feels most comfortable to you. You're doing really great, all of you. And as you continue to extend the exhale, just imagine releasing any tension you might be holding in any part of your body. You could even tighten the muscle of that part of your body and then release it as a way of letting it go. Yeah, you might move your neck side to side or move your body in some way just to just release tension. For some of us, it's a new experience to even just be connecting to our bodies. Because when the world feels chaotic and scary, we tend to live from the neck up. Okay, and when you're ready, you can gently bring yourself back, nice and slowly. And then just tune in again, just in a few minutes here. Tune in and notice again on a scale from 1 to 10, just where your nervous system feels. Well, how does your nervous system feel in your body? And notice if the number changed, if you moved toward relaxation, just feeling more centered and peaceful. And if you did, just raise your hand. You can physically raise your hand. I'm going to just scroll through and see. Yeah, so you notice a difference. Great, wonderful. In a short amount of time, right? That was less than 5 minutes. And we just so often forget to do that. We forget to just calm ourselves down, taking just a few minutes to do that. So I've been learning about the nervous system in a more detailed way, as I said, and it's really made a difference in my life, an enormous difference in a lot of ways. So, we have this autonomic nervous system, this system of the body that, interestingly enough, begins getting created in utero. So the state of your mother's nervous system influenced the creation of your nervous system in your body. I mean, how wild is that, right? Especially in the last 3 months of before you were born. And I know, for example, my mother was a very anxious mother. I was the firstborn for her. So I was the firstborn. I was going to say for her, for anybody. I was the firstborn. And she was very anxious. She told me that. They moved several times while she was pregnant with me because of her anxiety. So I can only imagine what my nervous system was, shaping up to be sitting in a kind of anxious soup in my mother's womb. And so our nervous system is the system that runs this machine called our bodies, right? The autonomic nervous system regulates breathing and heart rate and, so many of the systems of the body that we're not even aware of. I think I read that 80% of like the vagal nerve system, 80% of what the brain operates on comes from messages. 80% of the body's messages go up into the brain and only 20%. So 80% of the information from the body that impacts the nervous system goes from the body to the brain. 20% goes from the brain to the body. Okay. I don't know how that just happened. There we go. I don't know. Terry, was that you or was that? No. Okay. Maybe there's a gremlin in my Zoom. Anyway, or maybe I'm supposed to be doing a whiteboard, which I won't be doing, but maybe next time. Anyway, so we've got the autonomic nervous system, and I'm going to keep this really simple. I'm not an expert, but I'm going to give you some resources. I mentioned one in the blog this week, a book by Deb Dana called Anchored, which I highly recommend. It's really well done. She did a very good job of translating polyvagal theory into a language that people can understand and easily use. And I love that. I love when people do that. She's a beautiful writer. I even recommend, if you like to listen to audiobooks, she also has an awesome voice as an audiobook. And I really appreciate that as well. It's good for the nervous system for some of us, right? So we've got the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous. We've got the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic. And the parasympathetic is a dorsal response and what we call a ventral response. So as I said in my blog, when our sympathetic nervous system is engaged, it's the mobilizing fight or flight part of the nervous system. So your buttons get pushed and you feel a surge of energy move through the body for some of you. Not everybody, but for some of you. It's the part that tells us warning, danger, something's happening. I need to take care of myself. I need to either fight, which could be sending that text or email or picking up the phone. It could be flight, which is I'm out of here. Just leaving completely and not dealing with the situation. But it's some kind of, it's a warning signal that something dangerous has occurred, depending on the level, could be very dangerous or minimally dangerous, but the body goes into some kind of mobilizing action. The dorsal response of the nervous system is the opposite. It's kind of the collapse response. So something happens, your buttons get pushed and you want to take a nap, or you want to run and hide. Or you just start to, people will say to me things like, I just feel foggy and confused. Or in a dorsal state, you might dissociate, just like go someplace else in your mind and just not deal with what's in front of you. So it's a more demobilizing, if that's a word, I think it is. Thanks, Chuck. It is a demobilizing kind of collapsed energy, a more passive energy. You want to run and hide, maybe zone out in front of the TV, maybe grab some carbs. I mean, you can do that with sympathetic as well in an effort to regulate it. But so we've got the sympathetic and the dorsal, and those are responses at varying degrees to some kind of stress. Then we have the ventral response. And the ventral response is a calm, clear, balanced response. It's when we feel safe, we feel comfortable, we feel at ease, able to just operate in, to do whatever it is we're doing in a calm, relaxed state. Now, I suspect many of us, for many of us, that's like not a common experience, especially these days, right? So one of the things I've done is as I've been studying polyvagal theory, studying the nervous system, I've been studying, observing my own nervous system response to life. And I tend towards the sympathetic response, the fight or flight response, mobilizing energy. So I just feel more comfortable in that world. My husband, Michael, if he were here, he would tell you he tends more towards the dorsal response, which I think I've mentioned before, which is when things get chaotic, he needs space. I just need space to go and like chill out and regroup somehow. So we operate at opposite ends. You can just imagine what that does when we're in a tough place together. Because then there's this thing called co-regulation. And what that means is that even right now, my nervous system is influencing all of your nervous systems because we're here together. And that's one of the big things, big changes for me, especially in the last few months, I'm beginning to see is to pay attention to how do I enter a conversation, a, a, a workshop, what's the state of my nervous system when I show up? And what do I need to do to move myself towards a ventral state so that I can show up in as calm and balanced a place as possible? It's one of the things I like about Deb Dana's work. She took polyvagal theory, which came from Stephen Porges, I think is how you pronounce his name. He was using it in a medical setting, I think with in obstetrics, looking at the nervous system and how it influenced the body. And Deb Dana took it into the clinician setting and said, wait a minute, now think about this. She said, wait a minute, if we don't teach people about their nervous systems, how theirs are operating and what dysregulation feels like to each one of us uniquely, and how to regulate our nervous system, how to restore a sense of ventral calm, if we don't teach people how to do that, then how effective is our therapy going to be? Right? Do I want to take somebody, for example, who is in a highly sympathetic state, mobilizing energy, feeling nervous, which you can imagine the first time, or maybe several times when you go in to see a therapist, you probably are dysregulated in some way. How am I going to take somebody and deal with their trauma if they come in already in a dysregulated state? It makes sense to think about spending time with patients, clients, coaches need to think about this as well. It makes sense to spend time thinking about talking about and creating some kind of safe co-regulation and teaching ourselves and the client or patient how to regulate their nervous system before we get about the business of having difficult conversations. So sympathetic is a mobilizing. So when I think about, I'm going to just share from my own experience here. When my nervous system is dysregulated, or some of the ways I dysregulate my nervous system is what I've really learned, is by moving too quickly, talking too quickly. I'm always having to slow myself down. Eating too quickly, walking fast. Not that there's anything wrong with that if you're exercising, but when you're not, when you're just moving quickly through life, you're naturally amping up. I'm naturally amping up my sympathetic nervous system. When something happens to someone I love and I launch into savior mode and I want to like step in and help, I'm now dysregulating my nervous system. Please hear me when I say this. The minute I catch myself trying to control anything, people, situations, the world, I am in a dysregulated state. This morning, I was in the middle of focusing on doing something, and my text went off on my phone. And I looked at it and I saw somebody needed something from me. My accountant needed something from me. And I watched myself automatically turn to get him what he needed. And I went, oh, this is another way that I dysregulate myself. First of all, I have my phone on when I'm trying to do focused work. Not a good idea, because the ping automatically triggers a nervous system response. But there are patterns of behavior that I have learned living with a dysregulated nervous system that tends towards sympathetic that I've been discovering over the last few months, like doing more than one thing at a time. Like I had to laugh at myself yesterday. I was listening to a talk by somebody that I had purchased a class and I wanted to listen to this person's talk. And as I'm listening to the talk, I'm also checking email. And I thought, hey, Cheryl, sweetheart, because I always call myself sweetheart. Hey, sweetheart, number one, you're not going to really hear what this gentleman has to say, and you really wanted to hear what he had to say. But you're dysregulating yourself right now because you're trying to do two things at once. And the body's nervous system isn't made to do that. However, because I've been doing that all my life, I'm really good at it. But I promise you, much of what I do is probably half-ass because of it, as my dad used to say, half-ass, right? So multitasking is actually a really great way to dysregulate your nervous system. And in the last couple of months, I have been consciously practicing doing one thing at a time. And it's remarkable how peaceful that makes life. Remarkable. So there were patterns. For the dorsal nervous system response, you might find that when something happens and you get triggered, you automatically go to the kitchen and look for some kind of carbohydrate or sugared food to eat to calm yourself down. Or you might find yourself turning to food because you feel lazy and lethargic and you're trying to wake yourself up, when in fact the lazy and lethargic is a dorsal response. And the real question we have to ask is, what just happened that caused my nervous system to get dysregulated? This is how we learn. So for example, you might find yourself scrolling on Instagram and all of a sudden you feel tired and you want to sleep. And you think, oh, did I get a good night's sleep last night? Oh, I'm really tired. You know what? I'm probably hungry. I need to I'm going to grab some nuts to kind of give myself some energy. Now, all of that could be true, but the nervous system dysregulation happens first in our lives. I mean, that's the first place to go, I guess, is what I want to say. You want to go to your nervous system. So you want to say, wait a minute, what was I just doing before I suddenly felt really tired? Oh, I was scrolling through Instagram. What did I notice when I was scrolling through Instagram? Oh, there's a whole bunch of political news, a whole bunch of threatening headlines. Maybe that's the thing that actually caused me to suddenly feel tired and think that I needed a nap or food or something to wake me up. So there are patterns that you will begin to observe in your own life when you start to see your life through the lens of your nervous system. Does this make sense to people? Just shake your heads if it's making sense. Okay, good. It's helpful for me to see the visual. Thank you for doing that. It helps regulate my nervous system to know. So again, we've got sympathetic, dorsal, ventral. The very first thing I've been doing that I've learned to do through the work that I've been reading is to let my body lead. So I'm more tuned into my body. And when I notice myself, I mean, this is how it works. So stay with me and see if you can identify with this. I'm talking about the sympathetic response. I notice all of a sudden I just notice I feel a little anxious. And so then I stop and I say, if I catch it early enough, it's like, oh, what just happened? Oh, then I notice I was thinking thoughts that made me anxious. Oh, okay. Stop thinking those thoughts. I'll say to myself, okay, let's not think those thoughts. And I can literally feel my nervous system start to calm down. So we first start with observing what happens in the body. Because when the body gets dysregulated, when the nervous system gets dysregulated, interestingly enough, from everything I've read thus far, the next thing that happens is we start to think dysregulated thoughts, which to me means I make up stories in my head. And sometimes they're wild stories, like, all of a sudden I'm feeling dysregulated and I notice it and I'm thinking, you know, the world's going to hell in a handbasket, or the stock market's going to crash. I'm going to wind up a bag lady. I mean, it can escalate very quickly. Anybody else notice that? Right? The stories start, yes. And the more we've been living in a dysregulated state, the quicker all of this seems to happen. So I feel some kind of discomfort in my body. The thoughts begin. And interestingly enough, from everything I've read, some of the first internal voices to start speaking are the self-blaming, self-critical voices. So it's just helpful to notice this. I certainly have noticed it. I notice myself automatically going to that place. And I think in some ways it does feel like a mini trauma response from when we're young. Because when you're young and something happens and you get dysregulated, the first thing we look at is, what did I do? What did I do and what do I need to do to fix it? If you're having that sympathetic response, right? So you begin to pay attention to the body, and then you begin to pay attention to the thoughts that follow the dysregulation. And you start to notice, oh, wait a minute, what started this? I can't tell you how many times my nervous system dysregulation began by doing more than one thing at a time. Like, I'm really surprised by that. I'm emptying the dishwasher. Oh, this is the other thing. Not only doing more than one thing at a time, but in that sympathetic response, sometimes it's like life feels like a game show. And the winner is the one who can get multiple things done at once in the shortest amount of time. Anybody else living in that game show? Just raise your hands if you feel like you're living in that game show, right? Like, I used to love seeing, I mean, I'm like a little embarrassed admitting this, but I'm going to just tell the truth on myself, which is I just used to love seeing how quickly I could empty the dishwasher. How quickly can I get it done? Right? Or how efficiently can I load the dishwasher? I've written about that in my books before. Right? Where the doer gets so overused, so overdeveloped, that we just start running a million miles an hour. I will readily admit that I have worshiped at the altar of efficiency for most of my life, because I think honestly, as a young girl, I felt like I had to run really quickly in order to avoid danger in some way. Like, it felt that way. That's what the nervous system felt like. Even that language speaks to sympathetic nervous dysregulation. So it all begins with observation, beginning to look at how does my nervous system feel today? How does my body let me know when something's up? Like, what are the early warning signals? In a dorsal state, it could be, I just want to like run and hide. I just want to take a nap. Or you hear yourself saying things like, why bother? It's too late. I wrote down here, sympathetic moves fast, dorsal slows down. Sympathetic gets controlling, dorsal gets passive. Sympathetic wants to be the savior, dorsal becomes the victim. Why bother? It's not going to change anything. Sympathetic loves to multitask and get things done, and dorsal, it's just tough to get yourself to do anything. You just feel like you're in a kind of foggy, collapsed state. Both are nervous system dysregulation. They're just expressing themselves in different ways. And by the way, we all experience both types of dysregulation. It's just that I tended towards sympathetic. But let me tell you, there have been times where I will plant my butt in front of the TV and watch like 2 episodes of a series because I just literally want to get lost. I don't want to face the world. And that's kind of that dorsal collapse, like, or retreat. Let's call it retreat reaction. We start by observing our own nervous systems. What happens in my body when my buttons get pushed? Just begin to get familiar with it. No judgment, just familiarity. What kind of thoughts do I think when my buttons get pushed? What stories do I tend to tell myself? You will begin to see patterns in the stories you tell yourself as well. Ventral is a state that we all have access to, and most of us need to cultivate an anchor for being there, or cultivate a way to return to a ventral state. Breath will do it. You've heard me talk about breath if you've been on any of my Zooms many times. Breath will help you to get regulated. Extending your exhale automatically engages the parasympathetic nervous system. So if you feel sort of triggered, breathing deeply and extending the exhale, for those of you who are sympathetically triggered, is great. For dorsal, it'll probably put you to sleep. So there's a saying somebody said to me, and I forget who it was that said it to me, but in a sympathetic state, you need to sit down and be still. And in a dorsal state, you need to get up and take a walk, right? So it's the opposite. The ventral state is a calm, clear, centered, safe state of the nervous system. And our nervous system is always, there's something called the ventral brake, vagal brake, I think it's called, where your nervous system is always trying to restore itself to a sense of equilibrium. For many of us, the system is so overused one way or the other that we actually have to give it some support. So a couple of other fun little things, and then I'll open it up. My husband, Michael, had a favorite sweatshirt for like 30 years. The sweatshirt was falling apart. It had rips. And he would always say to me, "Don't you dare throw my sweatshirt away." And I never did. And finally, one day, it was just so threadbare, he had to throw it away. Well, I've learned in studying nervous system regulation that we all tend to have favorite pieces of clothing that make us feel safe, favorite places to sit or lounge in our homes that feel safe and comfortable. You might have favorite colors you like to wear. I know years ago when I was first beginning my career and I was giving free talks and I was terrified of speaking in public, I had a friend of mine who died and left me a ring, and I always wore that ring whenever I would go to give a talk. I called it my good luck charm. I now understand I was regulating my nervous system. It was an anchor for me. There might be certain views, my views of nature, and why I write about weather a lot in the beginning of my blogs is because it's like a ventral anchor for me. It returns me to a sense of calmness. You might have a certain food. Chicken pot pie will do it for me every time. I mean, it just sounds like nervous system regulation, doesn't it, to some of you? So I just think it's interesting to think of it that way, because now when I look around my home, I look around and I say, I see so many things that regulate my nervous system that I put in place without realizing why. We can also think about the people in our lives. This is a tricky one. The people in our lives who regulate our nervous systems and the people in our lives who dysregulate our nervous systems. I'm finding that the better I'm getting at consciously regulating my nervous system, the harder it is for me to experience anything that's super disrupting. Like today, I went out for an appointment earlier and I got on the radio and I put on my favorite talk radio station. And they were interviewing a man who spoke so fast and intensely that I had to shut it off. I thought, this is so dysregulating for me. Like, and I said to my husband, I know I must sound like a little nervous system diva or something like, no, that's dysregulating to me. I'm not. But I will tell you that when you learn about the things that really trigger your nervous system in a way that's not healthy, you start to be a lot more careful about what you let into your environment. Now, why is this important? I'll finish with this and then open it up, I promise. When we're in a ventral relaxed state, we're not overreactive, we're proactive in a healthy way. We have a lot more compassion and clarity. We act from a sane, balanced perspective. We're more loving and compassionate. We're more empathetic, but in a balanced way, because our empathy can also dysregulate us when we enter into the experience of others and imagine what people might be feeling. That's called nervous system dysregulation as well. When it starts to impact our physiology and our thinking, we're just better humans when we're in calm, centered places. And I think that that's what we need more of in the world right now, which is why this kind of work is important to me. And also, as elders, when we think about the wisdom years, right now the world needs wise, calm, clear elders. Let me take that back. Let's not say the world. The people in your life need a wise, calm, centered elder. They're craving that. And that's the kind of elder I want to be. And I want to be a good wife. You know, I think I might have said this. I don't know why I think I said this in my last Zoom, but it's worth repeating. Because of co-regulation, our nervous systems speak to each other before we even open our mouths. And so many times I'd get upset with Michael, let's say, for being late because he tends towards dorsal, so he moves more slowly. I tend towards sympathetic, so I move more quickly. So I would go upstairs to say to him, come on, you've got to get going, we're late. And my nervous system is communicating with him before I even get to the bathroom where he is. And I think I may have said that in the past, I would say to him, come on, we've got to get going. And he would say to me, stop, you're making me stupid. And I would say to him, what do you mean? And he's like, when you behave like this, I drop things. I can't and really what he's doing is he's going into a collapsed dorsal state. Well, things have been I'd say the last couple of weeks, I've said to him, do you notice a difference in me? He's like, yeah, I feel calmer, which is actually the perfect, little dialogue for co-regulation. Because my nervous system is more regulated, guess what happens? When you're with someone that tends towards dorsal, he can come out of the cave, look around, see that the coast is clear, and actually begin to take action because he doesn't feel like he has to protect himself from my dysregulated sympathetic nervous system. And I'm no longer trying to get him to get up and do something, because I recognize it's the opposite of what somebody in a dysregulated dorsal state needs. They need gentleness and safety, and they need me to have my own nervous system regulated. So it impacts our families, our children, it impacts our pets. I notice, with cats, I have cats, I've had dogs in the past. The calmer I am, I had to take my little Wednesday to the vet a few weeks ago. And taking cats in a car is not a fun experience if you've ever done it. They howl, they sound like they're, dying. But this car ride was 50% better because I was conscious of keeping my nervous system in a calm state. So it impacts everyone around us. The work that you do, if you're someone who sees patients or clients, start asking yourself, what's the shape of my nervous system right now before I step in and start working with this person? Okay, I know I kind of covered a lot. I'm very excited about this work because it gives a name and a kind of um, system, a process to what's been happening. And I feel, in spite of all that's going on in the world, I feel more effective and more at peace and really more able to be to contribute in a powerful way because of the work I'm doing around my nervous system. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions. I'll do my best to answer for you. And as you know, I always like to try and answer them in a way that serves everybody on the Zoom, not just the person I'm speaking with. So I'm going to ask first by please, if you raise your hand, make sure you have a question, okay, rather than a comment. So let's go to Alice. Hi, Alice. I'm going to ask you to unmute. There you go. Hi.
Hi, Cheryl. Um, I was thinking throughout your talk about tapping, and I was wondering where, I know you're a big advocate of it. I've seen you work with Nick and Jessica Ortner. I was just wondering where that fits into your new learning mode.
Yeah, it's a really great question, Alice. We always joke around, those of us who have been doing tapping for years, that we forget to tap ourselves, right? But yes, as a matter of fact, as somebody who's done tapping sessions with people, it's really amazing to me how well tapping can calm, especially a sympathetic response. I find with tapping, and I've been doing it for over 25 years now, it usually calms people down. So I've never really thought, like, is this person in a sympathetic dysregulated state or dorsal? I know that it causes yawning, right? And I always see that as a good sign. I know that, okay, so I think what's happening is, I mean, I know what's happening is the nervous system is getting regulated just with the tapping alone. So as a coach, I really love having a big toolbox, Alice. I always have. So I have lots of different tools in my toolkit. And so, absolutely, if I'm dealing with somebody, for example, who's in an agitated state, which would be sympathetic, and they had something happen, like let's say they just got fired from their job and they can't stop replaying what their boss said to them. I would use the tapping to help stop that replay. And I would also know, in using the tapping, now I would know I'm helping to calm their nervous system because they're not going to make good decisions in a dysregulated state. They're going to say things that they're going to regret later on. They're going to do things they're going to regret later on. Um, as a matter of fact, so much of, especially Deb Dana's work, she says that, well, I'm not going to speak for her, but my understanding of the work is that unless you're in a regulated state, you're just, you're way more effective in a regulated state. So yes, I would use tapping. And I thank you for bringing that up, Alice, because now when I'm using it, I'm really going to see it as a tool to regulate the nervous system.
Um,
Thank, thanks. Hi, Vivian. Welcome. You just want to, there you go. Hi.
Thank you for taking me on. I pick up negative energy even when I'm sleeping, believe it or not. So I can be awakened if there's a war going on the other side of the world. And then I have to calm myself down and get myself back to sleep. And sometimes it takes all night.
Yes. Here's what I would say about that, Vivian, and I don't know for sure, but I feel very deeply what happens to the earth, as an example. And in the past, I could get very worked up about any kind of, I mean, I drive by an animal that's been hit and it was devastating for me.
Me too.
Well, I now understand that, Vivian, for me, I'll speak for me, is a whole lifetime of nervous system dysregulation, so that my nervous system is so well skewed towards disruption that the littlest thing can disrupt it. I would suspect that if you begin, like I would get Deb Dana's book Anchored. Let me see. I have it right.
I got it in audio.
Yeah, good. I listened to it in audio and then I bought the book because I wanted to make notes. I would really focus on re-regulating your nervous system because I suspect that what's happening is, look at that little baby in your lap. I mean, that's going to regulate your nervous system, right? I suspect. So when you say, I'm really affected by negative energy and what's happening in the world, we all are. And depending on how tweaked your nervous system is how disrupted you're going to feel. Does that make sense? So I would really encourage you to start looking at, okay, what are the things I need to do? And Deb Dana lays out a really great plan in Anchor. There's other books as well, and she has another book. I can't remember the name of it, but she lays out a beautiful map for learning about your nervous system and getting it regulated. That I'd literally study it like a course and just take it one step at a time. It will be enormously helpful, I think.
Does she talk about being affected by the judgment from others, even if it's unspoken?
Yes, I mean, your nervous system's going to, well, think about what I said about co-regulation, right? So
Yes.
I can walk in a room and if someone's judging me, my nervous system is tracking that and I don't even have to hear their words.
Okay, great.
So this is why, the next conversations or like the next level of conversation, we could do a whole Zoom gathering just on people who dysregulate our nervous system, right? And how to handle what relationships do we need to, what relationships do we need to end? What relationships do we need to adjust? Who are the people that we need to see less of? Who are the people we need to see more of because they're regulating to our nervous system? So yeah, I think you're going to find her book very helpful. And I just saw, what did I see in the chat? Somebody said, Anchored is currently free on Audible. Huh. Scott, I don't know why, but that's great. I always like to support authors, though. I'm a big believer in supporting artists and, buying their work. So I do want to say that. But if you can't afford it, grab it on Audible right now for free. And Scott, it might just be your Audible, but, check it out and see people. Thank you very much, Vivian, for your question. Let's go to Kathy Miller. Hey, Kathy. I'm asking you to unmute. There you go. Hi.
Got a question now. Is it kind of that you tend to be one more of a nervous system over other, or can it be situational depending on the circumstances or the scenario that you're facing? Because I can go both ways.
Yeah, and we all do. I mean, our nervous systems, we all have the dorsal and the sympathetic responses and ventral responses. So without a doubt, I would say that I just think that some of us have such a well-developed patterns of behavior related to one that we tend towards that. But I can imagine, I mean, I think about 9/11, for example, Kathy, and I was at the airport on the next American flight out of Boston on 9/11. And when we came off that plane and we were in shutdown in the airport and had no idea what was going on, I absolutely just collapsed. Like I just was like in a complete dissociated, where am I? What's going on? That was a big trauma, right? And, my phones were, I mean, it was crazy. It was so overstimulating, I think, that I just shut down. So, I think it depends on the situation probably. And that's why it's really good to learn about the whole nervous system and the sympathetic, the dorsal and the ventral responses. So thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're very welcome. Is it Meti or Met? I don't know how to say your name, dear.
Yes, that's correct. Meta. Yes.
Meta. Okay.
Yes.
Hi. Hi.
Hi. Yeah, this is really helpful with a lot of great tips. My question is more related to chronic like pain and illness. Because yeah, I live with an illness with a lot of pain and it affects the nervous system. And what would be your views on that?
Well, again, just based on think about it. So we're talking about the nervous system, right? The nerves are connected to the nervous system. And I would absolutely and based on what I've read so far, that there is definitely a link between chronic pain. Like I wonder, just like with things like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, Lyme's disease, even like my experience, this is just my experience as a coach over the years. whenever I have been working with a client who's working with a doctor around those physical ailments, I'm always looking at what's going on in that client's life that's contributing to the physical problem, because the body's the last place for the stress to land. And so I've seen unbelievable evidence of people healing because they finally dealt with their bad marriage, or they moved to where they wanted to move to, or they got rid of the friends that were, constantly criticizing them or judging them. So our life, epigenetics tells us that our environment, whether it's the environment of the body, the environment of us, where we live, the environment of our world, unfortunately, right now, turns genes on and off. And it's got to turn pain on and off. So I would absolutely, if I were dealing with someone with chronic pain, I would so want to teach them about the nervous system and help them to regulate their nervous system. And Mete, I would be measuring on a regular basis because you want to see results, right? That's what helps keep us going in the right direction. I would be measuring pain levels maybe on a weekly basis as I go along, doing things like, is my environment comfortable for my nervous system? Is the food I'm eating supporting my nervous system? If you're eating lots of sugar, you're going to get lots of spikes in your nervous system reaction. You're certainly going to get lots of spikes in your pain with pain. Um, are the people in my life supporting? Is my work supporting my nervous system? I mean, my husband Michael was doing an event a couple weeks ago and was dealing with a poor woman who had a boss who was constantly at her every single day. And it turned out that this woman, he also discovered that she was chronically shopping on Amazon. And when I watched this unfold in front of me, I thought, yeah, she's trying to regulate her nervous system with some kind of behavior that she can get lost in, when really what needs to be dealt with is this boss that's treating her poorly every single day. Right? So, you know, these are some of the things that we want to be thinking about. And I think it can absolutely support a reduction in your pain, Mete, and just make sure you track it as you learn and practice. Okay?
Thank you. That's
You're very welcome. Let me just, I'm going to look at the chat. Thanks, Terry, for opening the chat. I forgot to say we were going to do that. I'm just going to look real quick. Yeah, so, Robin says, any advice in dealing with people who dysregulate your nervous system, especially family members who refuse to respect your boundaries? You know what, Robin? I'm going to recommend another amazing, amazing book. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this. It's called Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. And Terry, if you could put the link in our chat, that would be great. That is a really powerful book. And as a matter of fact, Terry, if you could look, I don't know, the Daily, which I think you need a New York Times subscription, but Terry, put the author's name of Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents, and let's see if we can find a blog maybe on Spotify or Apple with a link. And the reason I mentioned that, Robin, is I recently she was interviewed on The Daily this week, and one of the things she said, I was so glad to hear a clinician say this publicly, that if dealing with family members hurts your emotional or physical health on a regular basis, you must set boundaries that can even include no contact. And so it's your job to set the boundaries and then to reinforce them. Most people who are used to stepping over your boundaries will continuously do so. And so they need to be reminded. And if they don't honor your boundaries, at some point, you either need to limit the time you communicate with them, or sometimes you may need to remove them from your life temporarily or for good. I've seen both. It's not a popular answer, but you know what? We have one precious life, as far as I know. And we want to make sure that we take care of ourselves. And if people are constantly dysregulating your nervous system, eventually you're going to get sick. And then, God forbid, you might need those people to take care of you. That's not going to be a fun way to live your wisdom years, is it? Anyway, let's see. Okay. Yes, somatic therapy absolutely helps regulate the nervous system. Big fan of that as well. Um, Terry, you're so good at resources. How can you get a narcissist to calm down? You can't. You can't. You probably really are going, if they're a true narcissist, you're going to probably need to limit your time around them and maybe completely. You can't show a narcissist how to do anything. If they're truly a narcissist, that's a deep, deep wounding. It's mental illness. And the best thing you can do is get educated about narcissism for yourself and get good therapy for yourself. Lucy, I'm so glad you're getting a lot out of this. It's great. And JP, if tapping irritates you, don't do it. It's not good for your nervous system. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. Diane says, I've always wondered if my husband's cognitive issues are due to chronic nervous system dysregulation. It's a really interesting question. Really interesting question. And, you know, the first thing I'd say to you, Diane, is get your own nervous system regulated, because if you tend to be impatient with him, which it's easy to do when you're dealing with someone with cognitive issues, and your tendency is to be dysregulated in a sympathetic way, then that sympathetic dysregulation can contribute. It's like when my husband said, "You're making me stupid." He was joking, but he didn't know that he wasn't. He was actually absolutely accurate. The prefrontal cortex shuts down when we're in nervous system dysregulation, and we can't think clearly. So anyway, all right, we've got a few minutes left. We'll see if we can just, Josie, we'll see if we can sneak you in real quick.
Yeah, so it's Jose.
Jose, thank you, Jose. Sorry about that.
I have a question about the physical part of this. Are you familiar with the complex regional pain syndrome?
No.
It is your nerves sends the wrong message to your brain,
Oh,
and
yes.
it comes after a physical impact.
Yes.
Now, I know somebody who's dealing with this, so I was hoping you know a little bit more about what therapy, because
I don't.
you don't.
Yeah, I don't, but you might want to introduce them to nervous system dysregulation, because I imagine that that could help. But no, that's not something I have any little bit of knowledge about, so I wouldn't want to speak to it. But this is interesting. Kathleen says, do highly sensitive people, do you think the condition is first caused by dysregulation rather than having more mirror neurons? So it's interesting. Mirror neurons, you know, are like, the simple answer is when we're communicating with somebody, the brain begins to mirror the often, you know, Tony Robbins spoke about this decades ago when he talked about matching communication styles. We now call them mirror neurons, which means when we're communicating with people, we are our brains are picking up signals, and we can often start to mirror people's Victoria, I'm doing it with you right now. Like, we can start to mirror people's body language when we're talking with them. I can't remember if it was a polyvagal podcast I listened to, but one of the things that happens is our nervous systems are dysregulated by what we're witnessing. And some of that I do think is because the mirror neurons kick in. And do I think it's first cause? I don't know, but here's what I do know as somebody who's highly sensitive. Nervous system regulation, understanding how to regulate the nervous system would be critical for people who consider themselves highly sensitive. And yeah, somebody says if you ask ChatGPT, yeah, I mean, use ChatGPT too to explore the nervous system. But you know what? Study Deb Dana's work first. She's the gal who's really done a wonderful job of bringing this to people, bringing this to the world in a very usable way. So, okay, I'm going to finish there. I hope that this was helpful. This first step, thank you, is to just begin noticing, to get educated. And Terry, let's see, do we have, you know, this is recorded. We'll put the recording on the website in the next couple of days. We'll also include the chat with the resources so that you can take that and look at the resources as well. So all of that's going to be there. Yes, thank you very much. That's awesome. Terry's got a YouTube video in there and the book. This is great. So we'll record all of that. It will go on the website. Start by just getting educated about your nervous system. Then begin to observe. What does my nervous system do when it gets dysregulated? What thoughts do I think? What behaviors do I engage in that dysregulate my nervous system? That's a big conversation. Doing things, more than one thing at a time, moving too quickly, allowing yourself to be interrupted by a telephone call or an email, checking email multiple. I mean, there's so many things. Watching the news right now. Do not watch the news today, people, with all this ridiculousness going on about tariffs and everything. Just don't do it to yourself. It is dysregulating. So stay tuned for the blog. I'm sure I'll continue to write about this and we'll do another Zoom gathering. Maybe we'll do some kind of follow-up around, let me know. Email me, Cheryl@CherylRichardson.com. Let me know what you'd like to follow up with around this conversation. And then I'll take those pieces and we'll do another Zoom gathering related to that. How's that? All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining me. It's what inspires me to keep doing it is knowing there's so many people interested in this stuff or interested in exploring the wisdom years. Let's make the rest of our lives the best of our lives. That's what I want for all of us. All right. Thank you. Mwah. Lots of love, everybody. We'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.